Hello and welcome to Two Guys One Game. In this video we're going to take a look at the games of everyone's favourite bird and bear combo, Banjo-Kazooie. We aren't looking at cameo appearances here, so there'll be no Diddy Kong Racing or Smash Brothers, I'm afraid. With that in mind, let's get started. Banjo-Kazooie is one of the best loved games on the N64, and it's easy to see why. Made by Rare back when they weren't slaves to the machine, it's a 3D platform game similar to Mario 64, where you take control of the titular bear Banjo and his Breagull buddy Kazooie, who have to rescue Banjo's sister Tootie, who's been kidnapped by the evil rhyming witch Grunthilda. You got all that? There are 9 vastly different worlds to explore, each containing 10 jiggies which you need to open the next level, and each level has 100 musical notes which are used to open new areas in the game's hub world. Just about everything in the game is spot on, the graphics are great, the music is spectacular, and it'll get stuck in your head for days. The controls are simple, even with the large moveset that you have, and even the humour in the game stands up. The characters are all just very likeable. This is one of those games where finding every hidden item and collectible is as much fun as the main game. The game and its sequel were remastered for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One and show everything in glorious HD, and they even sort out the frame rate issues that crop up in the N64 versions. But no matter what platform you play this game on, you're going to have a good time. BanjoTooie is the gigantic sequel to Banjo-Kazooie, released for the N64 and later the Xbox 360 and Xbox One in glorious HD. The graphics in the game have had a big update and they look great, and the sound, music and humour is still brilliant. Gameplay is largely the same as the first game, with another 9 worlds each containing 100 notes and 10 jiggies to be tackled. There's a few differences here though. This time the shaman, Mumbo Jumbo, is a playable character, although you only get to use him for a couple of minutes per level. It would have been nice to see him have a bit more to do. There's also loads of new moves as well as the ones from the original game, including first-person shooter sections, which are a fun change. The game world has grown immensely and in my opinion not necessarily for the better. It's easy to get lost here, especially in the hub world, and some levels start to feel like a bit of a chore to complete. There's also a multiplayer mode here too, but this feels very tacked on and you'll probably never really bother with it. Overall it is still a great game, but I think I would recommend the first one over this one. Here we have Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge on the Game Boy Advance. It's a follow-up to the N64 games, which has pretty much the same gameplay and style, just in a pseudo 3D setting. For the Game Boy Advance it all looks pretty good, with a lot of detail and some nice colourful graphics. It could have benefited from being a bit more zoomed out, so you had more of a field of vision though. Also, the main problem with the game here is the perspective, which makes it hard to tell exactly where the platforms are. You often jump thinking you're going to land on something, only for it to be miles away from you. The levels themselves are fun though. There's only 5 of them here though, and to be honest, they're all pretty easy. You can beat this game in just a few hours if you want, and you'll likely only die a handful of times. Even the final boss is easy and simple. Having said that, for a portable game, it's fun. You have a bunch of minigames throughout that you need to win to earn your jiggies. Sadly, a couple of them are reused throughout the game though. But if you're a fan of the Banjo games, it's a decent entry that's probably as faithful as possible on this hardware. Banjo Pilot is the obligatory racing game that all successful franchises get, and like most of these, it's alright, but it's never going to replace the OG, that's you Mario. Here you race in planes rather than carts or cars, and while this is kind of original, it also means that the controls are pretty wonky and bring the fun factor down a bit. You do get used to it, but I don't think you should have to get used to any controls in a game. Other than that, it plays exactly as you'd expect. You have the usual array of tracks, with the Banjo universe actually lending itself perfectly to a racing game, so you'll see locations and characters from the first 2 games that you'll recognise. There's a decent selection of characters and plenty of unlockables, which is good. To mix things up, each cup has a champion that you have to beat in a one-on-one dogfight, which is interesting, but these all basically end up playing out exactly the same. Overall, it's not a bad game, it's just about as average as you can get, and it's hard to recommend over most other kart racing games out there. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts for the Xbox 360 is a 3D adventure game, but unlike the first 2, has an emphasis on creating and driving vehicles to help you collect your jiggies. Again, like the originals, you travel through various worlds completing tasks to get a jiggy or musical notes. Get enough of these and you can make it to the next level and eventually take on Grunty, where you battle your custom cars. The game looks fantastic with a really nice art style and a beautiful world. Gameplay wise, it's a very good game. It does have some issues though, and not just the fact that it's not a traditional Banjo game. Firstly, the tasks to get jiggies are often quite dull, with you just needing to get from A to B within a time limit. There are some exceptions of course, but the fact that the missions usually only last a couple of minutes anyway means that you're usually looking at the loading screen more than playing them, and yes, there are a lot of loading screens here. The vehicle building is also a bit tedious and often confusing, meaning that unless you spend hours learning it, you'll end up just using the pre-made basic vehicles, and when this is one of the main focuses of the game, that's not ideal. However, there is a lot of fun to be had with the game. So there you go, that's a brief overlook at every Banjo game so far. I hope to see more in the future, but I won't be holding my breath. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. We upload new videos when we make them. You can also follow me on Instagram at TheReviewsBrothers, where I have over 400 reviews of retro and modern video games. Now all that's left for me to say is thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.